It's been a busy past couple of weeks for Eric and I. We've been traveling, shooting waterfalls. We were in New York City the other day. And one of our favorite things to do every fall is to go to the Photo Plus Expo at the Javits Center in New York City. So we were there this past Friday, and we got to handle some new cameras and some new equipment from Canon and Nikon. In this video, I'm going to talk about the Nikon Z50 and how it compares to the Canon M50. Now, the Canon M50 is a little bit of an older camera, and Canon has since come out with the M6 Mark II, which is more in line with the Nikon Z50 as far as specs and price point and kind of the way the camera is set up. But there are a few key differences. The Nikon has a built-in viewfinder and the Canon doesn't. So physically, the M50 is more in line with this new Z50 from Nikon. So I'm going to talk about them. And since I own a Nikon DSLR and I also own the Canon M50, it's going to be interesting to see, how this new little camera compares to what I already have and what I was expecting from the mirrorless cameras. Since I'm already a Nikon owner, I'm very familiar with their menus and the way the cameras work. I was curious to see how this new entry-level mirrorless camera from Nikon would feel compared to my DSLR. I was not familiar with Canon's menu systems really. I had a Canon 5D Mark II way back when that I bought from Eric, but I'd been so entrenched in Nikon systems that when I moved to the M50 to do video and these type of things that we're shooting right here, it was like learning a whole new camera system again. And so now I'm pretty comfortable in both of them. So I wanted to see how the Nikon Z50 felt. What are the things that I think it really missed the mark on, and some of the things that I think it might excel at going forward. And also, if you're a new camera buyer and you don't have either system and you've never bought into anyone, I'm going to give you some of the pros and cons of going with a Canon system and a Nikon system if you're just starting out and wanting a mirrorless camera. So we showed up at the Javits Center, and as soon as you walk in, on one side is Nikon, the other side is Canon. And just as a little side note, Sony was missing from this trade show this year, so it was very interesting to see a lot of the big companies not here this year. Manfrotto didn't have a booth, Bay Photo didn't have a booth, some of the other tripod companies weren't there. So I'm not sure what's going on with this expo right now. But if you wanted to see Sony gear and you showed up here this year, there wasn't any to look at. Yeah, so a couple of blocks away was B&H Photo. You could go there and check out the Sony gear, but it's different. We heard from some people that Sony's going to be doing their own type of expo thing for their gear, so kind of interesting. Nikon last year put out the mirrorless cameras, the Z6 and the Z7, and I was able to handle those at the show this year and got to play with them. And then we went out shooting with some of our friends who own these cameras, and they're very nice cameras. And the in-body stabilization in the Nikon Z6 and 7 is really amazing. We stopped over at B&H Photo, and I was able to actually take a 1-second handheld shot, and it was sharp. There was, the in-body stabilization is it's just something that I've never experienced in a handheld camera before, that where I can, really shoot at an unbelievably slow shutter speed. So I was hoping that the Z50 would have this inside. It doesn't. It has the same mount as Nikon's mirrorless cameras, and it's a very big mount. So when you look at the camera in the front, the whole front is basically the mount. It's a large opening. The Canon M50 is much smaller. Nikon only has two lenses that are built for this camera right now. One is I think it's a 16 to 50, and then there's a telephoto lens, like a 50 to 250 type lens. And they kind of cover the spectrum, but they're slow aperture lenses. They're not going to give you that shallow depth of field that you want. So they're just getting started, whereas Canon already has a pretty decent amount of M mount lenses that are available for the M50, the M6. So those lenses are nice. I'm shooting right now on the M50 with the 22mm f2 little pancake lens that is a great little lens. They have telephoto lenses. They have basically a 50mm equivalent. There's definitely more options if you opt into the Canon mirrorless system right now, and plus you can adapt all of Canon's huge selection of lenses. Nikon's lenses that have the Z mount, they're all pretty expensive. These are entry-level cameras, so you're not really going to buy one of these, I don't think, and then go out and buy a $2,000 20-40-70 for this. You're probably either just getting started, you want something a little compact, and you maybe want to have some native lenses that are small and very versatile. So in that aspect, Canon definitely has the advantage because Nikon just doesn't have those lenses yet. They only have two being introduced with the camera right now. But that being said, if you have older Nikon and Canon lenses, which I do. I have a bag full of Nikon lenses that I could adapt to this camera. So we took a little video of me handling the camera here, and this is the Z50, and I was playing with it, trying to get some, feel for it. And the first thing I'll say is it has a very nice deep grip that I really enjoyed holding. It feels like a professional camera. It doesn't feel plasticky. There are control dials on the front and the back. It feels like a Nikon camera. I really thought they did a great job with that. It's a little bit smaller than the Z6 and 7, which, by the way, are identical in physical size. I think there's just some differences in the sensors and things like that. But the Z50 is smaller. The ergonomics of this camera are very nice, and when you hold it in your hand, it feels like a decent camera. The Canon M50 is a little smaller. It's a little lighter. And it doesn't feel as solid to me when I'm holding it in my hand. Now, if you're going for something that's small and pocketable, that might be a good thing because it is a little bit smaller. The first thing you'll notice when I'm handling this is that the screen flips down. Well, let's start with this. If you're getting this camera for photography only, I think the Z50 is a great camera to use if you're already in the Nikon system. It's got a 21 megapixel sensor. Its autofocus is really, really nice. I was able to use the eye track autofocus and it works flawlessly. You just, as soon as it sees a face, it picks out one of the eyes and it will just lock onto it. And no matter what you do with the camera or where the person moves, as long as the person's eye is visible, the camera is going to lock onto it. Now in the upper level Nikon cameras, there's actually the ability to switch from eye to eye. This camera doesn't have that. Maybe at some point it will, but that's not yet. When you look through the viewfinder, you control your focus point with the touchpad on the back. Now you can't, and this is one of the things that I really wanted to know why you couldn't do it, but it's just not set up this way. On the Canon M50, you can slide your finger around on the touchpad. When you have the camera up to your eye, you can move your thumb around and move your focus point to where you want. You can't do that with the Nikon. The Nikon's screen in the back is a touchpad, but not for focus. When you pull it away from your eye, you can touch to focus on it, but when it's up to your eye and you're using the viewfinder, you can't slide your finger around and touch to focus, which I think is a little bit of a shortcoming because when I do put the Canon M50 up to my eye, that is a very easy way to focus. And I know Eric uses that all the time when he's using his Canon R, which has the same type of system. Now on the Z6 and Z7, there's a little joystick that you use to move around your focus point. This camera, the Z50, doesn't have that, so you have to use the little touchpad on the back that's on the back of all Nikon cameras to move your autofocus points around like on a DSLR. The next thing that I just can't understand is why they put the screen to flip down. Now I'm sitting here looking at my Canon M50, and off to the side here is my screen. I can see what I'm doing. I would not be able to use my screen with the Canon Z50 because my tripod is right in the way. I'm mounting my camera to the tripod so I could sit here and do this. If you're going to vlog using a GorillaPod or any kind of stable, if you want to have the camera mounted to anything basically, you're negating the ability to use the screen and see yourself. So if you're just into photography, maybe that doesn't matter to you, then it's a nice little camera. I really like it. Everything about it, the way it felt, to the shooting experience, to just the controls, the way they laid out, the menu systems. If you're a Nikon shooter, it's a nice camera. And if photography is your thing, I don't think you're going to be disappointed with this camera at all. But if you're staring at these two cameras, the Canon and the Nikon, and you want to shoot video, to me, the Canon M50 is still the clear winner because the Canon M6 Mark II also has a flip down screen, which I can't understand why they did that. Now, I actually spoke to the Nikon rep that was there and I said, why would they do this when people want to shoot video and they can't see themselves? And this is the answer he gave me. He said, well, most people who are shooting video will have this inside of a cage and they'll have a microphone mounted to the top and they'll have monitors and this. And I'm thinking to myself, I don't know that people are going to buy an entry-level mirrorless camera to do that kind of filmmaking and have that kind of external gear attached to it. So I'm not sure about that. I mean, I know for me, for this level of video, I want a flip out screen on the side. So I don't know. I just feel like Canon nails this and Nikon has missed the mark on this. And their DSLRs are the same way. And the mirrorless cameras also. Nikon just does flip up screens, tilting screens, but nothing, where you can have it out to the side. Where Canon now on most of their cameras every camera they come out with, they're putting a swing out screen on, and it's great. And I know Eric used his the other day when we were shooting in the city. Every time I looked at him, he had that screen out to the side, and he was taking different shots from different angles, over his head, down low. And it's a great tool to have. So if you've been watching the channel, we've done extensive videos on the Canon M50, and we really like this camera. And for photography, you're not giving up anything with this camera. It's a really nice little camera. If you use the native lenses, you're going to get really high quality images. If you adapt Canon's better lenses to it, the images just go up from there. It's not the best in low light. Now, I didn't get a chance to test the Z50 in low light. I don't know, so I can't speak to that. But I know with my Nikon DSLRs, it's really good in low light. So, and from what I understand also, the Z6 and the Z7 are phenomenal in low light. So I don't know how that's going to play out. So over time, when the cameras become available on the market, I'm sure there'll be reviews about that. But the M50 itself is not the best in low light. It's fine, but you can't crank your ISO up on this camera like you can with a full-frame DSLR. Both of the cameras have pop-up flashes, which is nice. You don't always want to carry a speed light around with you. And if you have a small camera with a small lens on it, having that pop-up flash on it sometimes is just perfect in, a little, quick situation where you just need to add some fill light to someone's face. So that's a great thing to have, and both of these cameras have that. The electronic viewfinders in both are good. They give you all the information you need. But like I said, the Canons, you can actually move your focus point around while you're looking through it with your thumb on the back of the touchscreen. The Nikon, you have to use the little trackpad on the back. Not a huge deal, but just something I noticed. Now the price point. So you can get the Canon M50 for around $600 with the kit lens. And that's what I paid for it last year. It's still selling at about that price on B&H Photo. Now if you look at the Nikon Z50, they are introducing it at almost $1,000. So this is something you're going to have to kind of decide for yourself. What are you looking for? Now, if I was going to spend $1,000 on this camera, I might say to myself, maybe I should just step up to the Z6 and get a better camera, a little more rugged body, something that feels a little better in the hand, and then I can build out my Nikon mirrorless system. Or do I want to get the Z50 and then at some point maybe have to flip up into the Z6 or the Z7 or whatever's next after that? I think if you're going to use this camera with its native lenses and kind of use it as more like a budget option, then I think it's great. If you're going to be adapting more expensive lenses, or if you already have more expensive lenses, I might wait and save up a little more money and go right into the Z6 and 7 line and into the full frame mirrorless. So who are these cameras for? I would say they are entry-level mirrorless cameras. The Canon M50 is a fantastic starter camera for video, for photography, for just about anything you want to do. If you're a young photographer, new to photography, you're just getting back into it, you want to be able to shoot some, decent quality video and get some amazing images out of a camera at a fair price point. If you wanted to get into Nikon mirrorless in a crop sensor format, maybe you have some DX lenses you want to adapt, this is a really nice camera to start that way. And with the adapter, which is not included by the way, so you have to buy that extra, Nikon has so many lenses that you can adapt to this camera. So for photography, I think it would be great. For video, the specs are very nice for video. The video specs for this camera are very good. They're better than the M50s. It shoots 4K, does everything you'd expect it to do for a modern camera to shoot video. The only thing is you're going to have to deal with the flip down screen. But if you're shooting video where you're looking at the back of the screen and you're going to be holding the camera out in front of you, this could be a great camera for video. And there are other reviews out there that have been done where they talk about the nuts and bolts of the video capabilities with all of the specs. I'm not going to go into that. This is just like a first impression of what I thought of the camera. I was hoping when I saw that the Z50 was announced that it was going to have the flip out screen, because then maybe I would get rid of my Canon M50 and I would go in with Nikon and just go all in with my Nikon stuff. But it doesn't seem like they're doing that. They're not doing the flip out screen, and there's still some things I don't love about it. So I'm not really sure. I'm still gonna stay pat with what I have. My D750 worked fine. I was out shooting with it in the city, and we were all over the place on the High Line and downtown shooting the skyline. So it's still fine. And the images that I get out of I love. And the M50 for these type of situations like what I'm doing right here has been perfect. So I don't need a new camera. I'm gonna stay pat and see what the next generation of these cameras bring. And I hope that Nikon, maybe get some feedback from Nikon camera owners that are wanting to shoot video and they want the ability to see themselves. I mean, vlogging is a big thing nowadays, believe it or not, whether you're into it or not or whatever, but we all watch YouTube, we all see these videos that are being done. And it's much easier to shoot yourself when you can see yourself. You just take a glance over at the screen and you can set your frame up. It just makes life a little bit easier. So when you have the choice of different cameras and you're just starting out, you may lean towards one system over another on something as simple as that. Both of these cameras are good cameras for photography. I have a feeling the Nikon's going to be a little bit better in low light than the Canon. So I'm not sure about that yet. But once we find out, I mean, that'll make this even better for photography, to know that it's going to do really well in low light. So that's just my take on my first impressions, having held these both. I've been using the Canon M50 for months, but just holding the Z50 and getting kind of a feel for it. It's a nice camera. I really like it. I just think they missed the mark on a few things. Right here, I'm going to leave the Canon M50 playlist. So if you want to learn more about that, you can. And we're going to leave a video here about going mirrorless, if it's time to do it or not. All these cameras are coming out now, and it's you might have that urge to go get a mirrorless camera, but there's some reasons why you may or may not want to get one. See you in the next one.